These Ipswich Town players are defying the odds.
Hello and welcome back to TWTV as you join us for another video verdict outside Old Trafford between the Sir Bobby Charlton stand, the East stand and behind the away end at Old Trafford where the Munich clock is stopped on February the 6th, 1958. And thanks for joining us for another look back on a town game as we fight for survival in the Premier League. And we're giving you some updates and some verdicts and some views on Manchester United 3, Ipswich Town 2. And I'm joined by Kallum Brisset and Phil Ham from TWTD. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello.
We've been here before, haven't we? The mood's not lifted.
Yeah.
It is, it's late, it's dark, but let's try and give our viewers some insights into what was, frankly, an eventful game. So, Kallum, I mean, I guess, you know, the season was hanging by a thread. Wolves gave us a bit of a lift yesterday by losing at home to Fulham, and frankly, in the second half, they looked poor. And for a big portion of that game, we thought we had a chance because obviously we were the second half was with 10 men, and at half time, I can tell you in this away end, Kallum, everyone believed. Harry Clark was in there running around, and it was great. But we managed to let it go, didn't we? Do you want to give us your view of the game and what were the kind of key moments? There was so much going on, wasn't there?
There was. You mentioned it was a chaotic game. It was a chaotic first half. The second half, I think, is ultimately what ends up being the biggest disappointment. And I think that was what Kieran McKenna and Sam Morsey both said after the game in terms of playing against 10 men. We'll come on to the first half in a moment. I won't skip past that. But that was a real disappointment in that, like you say, at half time, there was the belief with the extra man, with the scores level, against, frankly, a struggling Manchester United side, and you could tell they were shot on confidence. Yeah, it was there was kind of a a bit of a lack of ideas really in the second half. The first half got off to the perfect start with a little bit of help from Patrick Dorgu and Andre Onana along the way, kind of pillaging the first goal of the game. But then United turned it on its head. 2 goals in 4 or 5 minutes, both from set pieces. All 3 goals ended up being from set pieces, which is what Sam Morsey told me after the game in terms of that was ultimately the biggest disappointment, because we've been quite good from defending set pieces this season. Had only conceded 3 before tonight, and then you end up conceding 3 in one night. It was obviously really disappointing, and they didn't look like scoring from open play, really. But then the red card happened, kind of out of the blue, and then a few minutes later we go and equalise. A cross that kind of finds its way in, so again, a slightly fortunate goal in that sense. But then our tails were up at half time. But then the second half was ultimately really disappointing, and it's another set piece that cost us even getting a point from the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Over to you, Phil. Phil, ahead of the game, some of the stats, Man U's had a really poor start to the season. At home, they've won 5, drawn 1, lost 7, a goal difference of -7. It's not the Man U of old, is it? They're weak. And Amorim's Premier League win percentage now is 27%. But we just didn't take advantage. For me, Kallum, Phil, once we got that first goal, we needed to hammer into them. They were struggling, and I'm not sure we really went for it. We seemed to lack ideas through the game, but I think we needed to get into them, Phil. What's your thought?
It's interesting, isn't it? You go ahead against Manchester United and and I think the team that Kieran McKenna picked was a team to take the game to Manchester United. But then you go 1-0 up, and then do you kind of then go a little bit more into your shell and think, well, we've got this to hang on to some degree and not be quite as proactive as you might have otherwise been? Now, whether that was the case, I don't know. But yeah, as you say, we didn't really kind of build on that goal, particularly in that phase. In his press conference, Kieran McKenna talked about sort of having one or two decent things in the first half. And I think we had one or two decent breaks, didn't we? I think Liam Delap broke for again. He might have scored within the opening minute again, almost similar to Saturday. So we had one or two decent attacks, but overall, as you say, yeah, I think Man U had most of the ball, but didn't look terribly convincing. And as Callum said, you didn't really get the impression they'd score from open play. But set piece, every time they had a set piece in that first half, there was one that where Harry Maguire had a header that was saved by Alex Palmer, and then the follow-up was sent deep into the stand. So in the first half, 3 set pieces and 3 goals. So or 2 goals and 1 very good chance. So yeah, there was no doubt where we were kind of lacking defensively, because otherwise we were holding them out. But yeah, and then the red card at that point. You think we were talking, I think we've spoken several times about how we've not had that rub of the green that Wolves had last week when they played AFC Bournemouth, and Bournemouth reduced to 10 men after half an hour, and they went on to win. Well, we had that scenario. We then scored another fortuitous goal. Jayden Philogene does seem to have the gods on his side, doesn't he? Also a very similar goal to one that David Beckham scored at Portman Road for Manchester United some years ago, in that 1-1 draw that everyone remembers. Yes, as you said, well, you don't because you're too young.
Were you even born then? No, you weren't.
Yeah, and it was ideally set up for us. And as you said, I can imagine exactly what it was like on the terrace. Everyone going, right, here we go. You know,
honestly, in here, everyone was down under the stand at half time, kind of hugging each other. This is it. We're going to go for it. And we just didn't seize on the moment.
And Kieran McKenna, his press conference said afterwards, that one of the things that they mainly talked about at half time was not conceding. And of course, within 2 minutes, they conceded. And the kind of things that he also picked up on was, his overall assessment was that we didn't manage or play the second half well enough. And really, I thought we lacked drive, we lacked guile. We showed so little.
I wonder if we lack belief. I felt like there was a confidence issue in their field. You know what I mean? I'm not sure they went. I mean, Man U went into a low block, didn't they? You know, they were kind of you found Greaves literally pressing on the side of the box, but I'm not sure we had the ideas or the belief or the drive to get into them.
And from a narrative perspective, conceding a goal 2 minutes after half time is the worst thing that can happen, because then the opposition just sit in and United actually, although they kind of sat in, they looked more dangerous than us, didn't they? Just on the break, Fernandes on a number of occasions breaking away, and and I thought we didn't really lay a glove on them, did we?
Yeah, well, we were talking before, weren't we, Callum, about how good is this Man U side? They've spent a huge amount of money. I was seeing in the online earlier that over the last 3 years they're second in the amount of net spending done. You don't realise that, but I thought they look poor. They had Fernandes and they had Maguire, and on set pieces it meant they were dangerous for us.
The only two they need, isn't it?
Yeah,
someone who's got a good delivery and someone who's big enough and can get on the end of it. But you mentioned about playing against 10 men in the second half. I can't remember us having an opportunity in the second half.
Yeah, let's
45 minutes against 10 men.
Well, let's come back. We're going to go to 3 words in the forum in a moment, because I think that's going to come out. But Callum, take us through the change of the team. Let's talk through the lineup and the system, and then let's talk about performance.
Same system as last week. There was a lot of talk about whether we might go back to the back 3/5 with maybe Ben Johnson coming in, but no, it was an aggressive approach. It was Philogene and Clark were the wingers again. The only 2 changes were Tuanzebe came back in for Ben Godfrey, which was as we'd all expected, and Sam Morsy came in for Calvin Phillips. Jens Karius was fit enough to start. Calvin Phillips not fit enough, but the rest of the team was otherwise unchanged. And to be honest, I thought it was the right call, because I think we're at a stage where I think we have to kind of roll the dice a bit. We have to try and go and win games. There's no point trying to get the odd point here. Like when we went to Tottenham, the season's quite early. The back 5 might have worked. Here, why not go for it? Man United are a team fragile on confidence and whatnot. And I thought the system worked all right. It was just the initiative in the second half just wasn't there at all to get back in the game.
That's right. I was in the town centre earlier chatting to some Ipswich fans, and one of those leaked teams knocking around. And it looked a lot weaker, but I really liked the lineup. I thought it was the right thing to do. It was bold. Axel's back. We love him, don't we? And he had an overall good game. But it was the right thing. Take it to them. Great to have Kudus back. How do we feel about the three? Over to you, Phil. How do you think about the three behind Delap? I mean, I thought Jack Clarke had a good first half and was doing well. I really like some of the stuff he's doing. I think he's growing into the season. Hutchinson, great moments. A lot of people around me getting frustrated with Philogene. I thought he did some good stuff, but I think I kind of understand some of that frustration.
Yeah, I thought defensively he did quite well at times. I noticed he sort of got back and put tackles in. But yeah, there was sort of, again, moments of frustration. I think there was one good opportunity where he kind of just gifted the ball away. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that there was... I think Hutchinson's best performance this season was at Tottenham, wasn't it? When we were under the cosh a bit in that the sort of second half of that game and not seeing that much of the ball, which I think was the case for much of the first half today. And yet we weren't seeing him break out in the way that he did against Spurs, and perhaps we probably wanted the same for Philogene. As you say, Clarke, I think when he's on the ball is kind of growing into the division. He's sort of
absolutely,
and he's growing in confidence. There was one moment in the first half where he dribbled the ball out the penalty area with great confidence. And yes, I think he's growing into it. And this is perhaps why Kieran McKenna is sort of persisting with him over the last 2 or 3 games, when perhaps you still kind of think, is he really worth a spot ahead of Nathan Broadhead? But I think he's kind of increasingly showing that he may be. And in fact, the chance in the first opening minute was one that he teed up for Liam Delap. So yeah, I think... I can see that perhaps sort of criticism of why perhaps not doing enough perhaps is perhaps something that could be levelled at those players, and perhaps not supporting Liam Delap enough, because I think he does find himself quite isolated on occasions, doesn't he?
Although a critique of Delap and actually Kudus in the first half, they broke through. They broke through towards the away end, because we were playing towards the away end in the first half, and both of them broke through, and it was really promising. And then they just went into a blind alley. Do you remember those two? They were really promising moments with people out wide, and I think it's just a theme this season, is some of that decision making going forward.
Yeah, you get the sense that we get in a reasonable position, and sometimes it feels like we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
There's, like I said earlier, there was no ideas. It was about getting into the final third and not really knowing how to score.
Yeah.
What the best decision is
to hurt. And then when they went in the low block in the second half, we then ran out of ideas of how to sort of get through them. If you know what I mean. We made let's talk about the subs. So Hurst came on. Who else came on? And how did they get on?
Hurst came on.
Broadhead
came on.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson came on. Smodics came on right at the end. And there would have been one more.
I mean, I thought Johnson actually did some quite nice stuff when he came on, but again, we were all just going down blind alleys. Let's think about who's your best performer from a town perspective, Kallum.
I'd probably say Jens Kudus, probably just the way that he was able to kind of break free. And I thought he looked a bit better going forwards than we have done.
Yeah.
He had a couple of attacking chances, whereas feels like he's kind of the deeper lying one of the two whenever he plays alongside whoever. Yeah. But he had a couple of shots blocked, had one that went across the face of goal that nobody turned in. That was probably our best opportunity of the second half, to be honest.
Yeah, indeed.
Best football.
And what about you, Phil? Who's your best performer tonight from a town perspective?
Yeah, I'd probably not disagree with that. We mentioned Jack Clarke, haven't we? Philogene scored twice, but obviously there was probably pressure on the fullback and the goalkeeper to some degree, but whether that caused the goal, I'm not so sure. And the other one was a cross. So I think it's very difficult to kind of pick top performers out of an overall poor performance. I think probably I'm being argued with by Kallum on this. I think probably overall the second half was probably our poorest 45 minutes given the context. Poorest 45 minutes of the season, just because the way that we had the game there for the taking, really. And
I just think belief and energy, Phil. I mean, there just wasn't enough
drive.
You know,
There wasn't enough. There wasn't enough
belief,
kind of.
and I think it's a belief thing. I think in some ways, some of those recent losses, Spurs at home, some of those drubbings that we've had, unfortunately, I think it caught up with the belief a little bit. I think there were just a bit of a lack of ideas. And also in the middle, I mean, I think, Morsey, was okay. Greaves and O'Shea were okay. But, there was just both Man U and Ipswich's central midfield. It was a bit poor, wasn't it? You know what I mean? It wasn't a great display from either teams.
But what I mean by drive is there was no one kind of... And Fernandes was doing this for Manchester United, getting on the ball, dictating it. And if he lost it, going back, winning it again. There was no one really kind of driving the performance on. No one in that, taking the game by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, you look throughout the team really, that they're kind of... How often did we see Leif Davis get forward? Not very often. I can remember one cross from him, I think, which was over here. And
because that left side should have been with them, especially down to 10 men. That left side should have been a bit of joy for us, but they've got closed out.
Areas that where we have tended to play have been dangerous over the last couple of years. We weren't dangerous, and overall. Yeah, not much too many positives to take.
Oh, it's late, it's dark, it's cold, it's Manchester.
It's Manchester. It's not raining for once.
At least it's not raining.
It was.
It was raining earlier. We thought we were going to get
there.
Just to close out on your view from the press box kind of view is, how was McKenna in the press conference? Because I thought his midweek press conference or the pre-match press conference, I thought he looked a little bit down, a little bit lost his mojo a bit. How was he today after the game?
Yeah, I think he's obviously flat after today, because I think it was a big opportunity miss, and he agreed with that assessment. And and he's come back to a club where he worked, and I think as he did at Tottenham, it would be nice to come back here and win, and he had a very good opportunity to do that. Huge opportunity. And I think his team haven't really kind of let him down, as it were. And this is not not suggesting it's a deliberate thing or anything like that, but his team has been quite a reliable team, I think, over the year. We've lost games. We lose 6-0 to Manchester City, but it's against Manchester City, and they're 11 against 11. Whereas today, they're kind of in a circumstance where we had the game in a position where it was there for us, and we didn't take it, and that's not happened an awful lot.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? The sort of League One Championship, early Premier season mojo, let's call it. Do you know what I mean? That kind of it seems to have ebbed away a little bit, and I think that loss of the mojo came through today when we needed to go up into fifth gear or sixth gear, didn't we? And it wasn't there today, and that must be disappointing for McKenna.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think he kind of, it's a difference. It's been a very disappointing few days, hasn't it, with the weekend going in the manner that it did with the Tottenham result, and also Wolves sort of climbing to effectively 6 points ahead of us, and then this on top of it. I think it's quite tough to take.
Yeah, sorry, Cal.
I think the bottom line is, and it's maybe a damning statement on the position of Manchester United at the moment, but I think the bottom line is, the way that the game went, if we perform the way that we know we could have performed, we win that game tonight.
You've nailed it. You've nailed it. You know that maybe the Ipswich that played against Liverpool in that first game, the Ipswich that played at Spurs, we'd have won. And that Ipswich just wasn't there today. And I think you're right. That Man U were a couple of good performers, great at set pieces, but
not a lot else.
Yeah,
really.
not a lot else. You're right. Well, let's start to close out by going over to the forum. Homer123 puts up his 3 words to kind of summarise, and there's been a big response tonight, as you can imagine. And let's pick out some of the things that have come through, and we'll start with you, Kallum. So, Victory Squad has put up set piece defending as his 3 words to kind of encapsulate the game.
I think if you ask Sam Morsey for his 3 words, that would be exactly the 3 the 3 from his chat with me after the game.
But let's really analyse what went wrong in the set piecing. I mean, no, it seemed to be on the 3rd game that Philogene was almost marking, if you know what I mean. What was going wrong on the set pieces? It was we zonal. Let's get Phil over to you. What's your thought on that?
Well, Kieran said that they were stronger physically than us, and we couldn't cope with their physicality of Harry Maguire and Hoyland and various other people. Kind of. We didn't. They were bigger than us in stature. I think that was one of the phrases. Yes. So, and as Kallum said, it's not been a problem for us most of this season. 3 goals, and I think only Brentford had conceded fewer than us from set pieces this season, which is quite a remarkable record, really, for a team that's come up. But today, yes, we were.
A lot of goals.
Do you know what? In the flesh, Maguire's a big guy. Mr. Slabhead, he's a big guy. You know, when you see him, he dominates the box at set pieces.
But what happened on that third goal? I'm not really sure, because I don't think Philogene was marking him as such. But Maguire kind of arrived having made a run that wasn't tracked as far as I could see it, and he arrived at Philogene. But yes, and who physically isn't strong enough. I mean, the first goal of Morsey, I think, not quite, it's Hoyland, wasn't it? He was battling with, and he kind of lost that sort of battle
because it was an own goal for the first one. I didn't really. Have you seen that played back?
It's a great ball. I mean, actually, that's something we need to mention is the deliveries from Fernandes for the set pieces were terrific.
If you take,
you expect that from him.
If you take the Premier League of 11, Fernandes is in it. Do you know what I mean? As is probably Cunha. He's
the only one in this Man United team that get close.
Exactly.
And that's the simple truth.
Just on an incident, talk about the red card. I haven't seen it played back. Have you seen it back? Was it a definite? Was it pretty blue? I mean, everyone around me was watching on their phones and going, "That was an absolute." Good on the ref for going to the screen and doing it in Old Trafford, which is
just
really
doing
hard
his
to
job.
do. Yeah,
As someone who used to work here would have said. It was a blatant red card. He just goes in too high, halfway up his shin, studs up, and I think he's just too enthusiastic with the challenge. I don't think it was a nasty, deliberate challenge.
No.
And once the referee had looked back, who didn't initially see it as a foul, let alone anything else.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt, and I don't think anyone had any complaint. Ipswich manager, Manchester United manager, anyone else, and of course it has. And Amari did eventually go off with an injury. With the injury that
it looked like he'd carried something.
So hopefully, Kieran was hopeful about how fit he might be.
Well, let's keep going. Phil, for you, let's go to Malcolm Blue. No killer instinct. That's his 3-word summary.
Yeah, I think I didn't really get as far as kind of needing a killer instinct because we didn't create the opportunity to kind of
that's a really
go
good
for
point.
the kill, did we? Do you know what I mean? I just think lacked drive and lacked kind of, perhaps you're right, confidence to some degree or belief, or we had a lot of the ball in the second half, didn't we? But we didn't really do very much with it. There was just
maybe the killer instinct was that kind of the people on the edge of the box wanting to kind of run into the box. Do you know what I mean? We weren't breaking the lines, just run into the box, break the lines, get at them, if you know what I mean. Maybe that's where the killer instinct. But you make a good point. You make a good point that there was no one had to finish anything because there wasn't any chances. Yeah, there was no spot. Back to you, Kallum, if that's all right. A bit of a harsh one from C. Boa. Passive, slow, toothless. God, that's harsh. But I certainly think the slow element, we weren't pinging it around to stretch them, were we?
No, definitely not in the second half. Probably not really to an extent in the first half either. There were a couple of times where it felt like we were breaking away, knowing we had the man advantage, and there was no obvious pass to make, and the game ends up getting slowed down. It allows Man United to get back into their shape, which from the moment they went down to 10 men, their shape was pretty much everyone behind the ball, and we know how difficult that is to break down.
And they did it well. They did it well.
But it shouldn't have got into the position where they were able to hold on to the lead, because at half-time at 2-2, 2 minutes into the second half to go and concede straight away from a set piece is ultimately the most disappointing individual moment from the game.
Yeah, and coming to the point that we talked about at the start is, once we scored, they looked loose. Let's get into them. Let's go for it. I think Phil made the point that, maybe we were thinking we should just consolidate a little bit, but it was time to go for it. And we just didn't have that kind of, that killer instinct we talked about earlier. So last one, Phil, if that's all right, over to you. This is quite an avatar name, or whatever you call it on the forum. What do you call them on the forum? Usernames. Budapest by Blimp. Great chance wasted.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would deny that. We've not won at Old Trafford since 1984, and if we hadn't scored at Old Trafford since 1992, Chris Kawomia. So it's not somewhere it's a particularly happy hunting ground by any stretch of the imagination. And so it was an opportunity. I think even before the game got into the scenario of being 2-2 at half-time with them down to 10 men, we saw it as an opportunity because United had been so poor. Is it 5 defeats out of 6 at home in the league, something like that? Before tonight. And an opportunity spurned. And and one I think it's another one of these games that if we do go down in May, we'll look back and think, should have been more points in the game. Should have been points in the game.
Well, that
for us.
chance wasted. Even with 10 men, we only got 56% possession. We had 12 shots, but we only had 3 on target, and we only had 1 clear-cut chance. That's the point. You've got to carve out more.
What was the clear cut?
I can't even remember.
Because if it's based on XG, then surely Philogene one where he tapped in from a yard out would have been pretty much.
That was the clear cut. Yeah, exactly.
So that was probably it.
Yeah. So let's start to finish the show. In terms of ground and atmosphere, I haven't been here. The last time I was here, I watched Manchester United 1, Manchester City 6, which was quite a spectacle as a neutral, and there's a big Poznan going on in this away end behind us. But it's quite a ground, isn't it? It's obviously really tired and ageing, and a bit unlike Spurs, where there's loads of Korean tourists, there's huge amounts of Irish tourists. What was the press box like? What did you make of the stadium?
Yeah, the facilities were good. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
The ground, saw a couple of comments from some Manchester United journalists saying that it was one of the best atmospheres of the season. I have to say that the standard must be pretty low, because I didn't think it was great, if I'm honest. But
yeah, I mean, I reckon they fired up 3 times, but the away end was good. And as I said, we had that belief. Harry Clark in the away end with his hood up, trying to hide but exposed, and we were all singing his name, and it was all great. But we didn't manage to take the chance, as we talked about earlier. Okay, let's end off with the Survival League. It's a missed opportunities we've talked about. We remain in 18th, so at the top of the promoted teams. We're still the better of those. We've got 17 points. The difference to Wolves is 5 points and a goal difference of -12, which is huge. We've only had 3 wins, 8 draws, and of course we've had 16 losses. So it's really hanging in a thread now, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, like you say, 3 wins all season. How many are we going to need in the last 11 to have a chance of staying up? It's going to be at least 4, probably 5.
Yeah.
So it's looking a difficult task.
Yeah. So, hopefully some belief can come from somewhere. Maybe that belief can come from the FA Cup tie away at Forest. So at least we'll have a little breather from the Premier League difficulties. Phil, do you want to close us out? How are you feeling about the Forest FA Cup game?
I don't know, really, because I think we'll have 11 changes as usual. They'll probably make quite a number of changes, I would guess, although they may... obviously, the Champions League is their priority, so I think they probably will make those changes. In their position, they could also have a bit of an eye in the FA Cup, but I think the Champions League is obviously the priority. But yeah, we've tended to do all right when we've made the 11 changes, haven't we? Perhaps 1 or 2 people on the fringes will think that they've got a chance of breaking into the regular first 11 after the 2 performances we've just had, or the 2 results we've just had. But yeah, I think it won't have too much of an impact, I don't think, on the league form. I think kind of Kieran McKenna was already talking about Selhurst Park in 10 days' time in his press conference, which illustrates where the priorities lie.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another video verdict. Indeed, we won't be around for the Forest game, so we're having a bit of a break ourselves, and hopefully a little bit of break from the the endeavours of the Premier League. But we'll be back at Palace for the away game, for an informed Palace, and we look forward to providing another video verdict then. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, and as always, please like and subscribe.